The doctrine of space. Kant propounded the problem, but gave no solution to it, nor did he point the way to a solution, and no one since then has proposed a remedy or the way to it either. The first flashes of understanding for the Kantian problem of space and time involve the concept of the fourth dimension, and higher dimensions in general. An interesting synopsis of thought developed in this direction is expounded by C.H. Hinton, author of the books A New Era of Thought and The Fourth Dimension. Hinton notes, among other things, when commenting upon Kantian ideas, that only their negative side is emphasized, namely that we are able to cognize things in a sensual way in terms of space and time only, which is regarded as an obstacle, hindering us from seeing what things in themselves really are, imposing upon things that which is not inherent in them and therefore shutting them off from us. But, says Hinton, if we take Kant's statement simply as it is, not seeing in its spatial concepts a hindrance to right receptivity, that we apprehend things by means of space, then it is equally permissible to consider our space sense, not as a negative condition, hindering our perception of the world, but as a positive means, through which the mind grasps its experiences, i.e., by which we cognize the world. There is an air of despondency surrounding this issue, as if this space apprehension were some kind of veil that shuts us off from nature. However, there is no need to adopt that position, because it is precisely by means of space that we apprehend what is. Space is the instrument of the mind. Examining Kant's doctrine of space from a practical point of view, it is important to develop the space sense, for it is the means by which we perceive real things. According to Kant, says Hinton, our space sense, or the intuition of space, is the most fundamental power of mind. The development of space sense makes us acquainted with a whole series of new concepts. Fichte, Schelling and Hegel have all developed theorems regarding the perception of space. However, the true successors of Kant are Gauss and Lobachevsky. If our intuition of space is the means whereby we apprehend, then it follows that there may be different kinds of intuition of space. However, the perceptive intuition of space must be colored by the psychic activity of the being that uses it. By analysis, the geometers above have shown that space is not limited, as ordinary experience would appear to inform us, but that we are quite capable of conceiving different kinds of space. Reference: A New Era of Thought. Kant established that the development of knowledge, under the existing conditions of receptivity, will not bring us any closer to things in themselves. However, there are theories asserting that it is possible, if desired, to change the very conditions of receptivity, and thus to approach the true substance of things. In the publications referred to previously, Hinton attempted to unite the scientific foundation of such theories. Our space, as we ordinarily think of it, is conceived as limited, not in extent, but in a manner that can only be realized when we consider our ways of measuring objects spatially. It is assumed that there are only three independent directions in which a body can be measured. It must have height, length and breadth, but no more than these three dimensions. If any other measurement be taken within, then this new measurement would be found to contain the old measurements. It is impossible to find a point in the body that could not be arrived at by traveling in combinations of the three directions already taken. But why should space be limited to only three independent directions? Geometers have found that there is no reason why bodies should be limited. However, we assume that all objects that we measure are thus limited. Therefore, concluding that the space that we use to conceive ordinary objects in the world is also limited to three dimensions. It may, however, be possible for beings to exist which live in a world where they are able to conceive a space of four dimensions. Can we then not consider a body of four dimensions as a unit having definite shape, in the space that we are familiar with? Our perception is subject to the conditions of being in space, however space is not as limited as we may at first think. The logical way to explore this concept of ampler space is to investigate nature. Then see what phenomena are to be explained using four-dimensional relations. To develop this knowledge, however, it is necessary to separate the self-elements, i.e. the personal elements, that we put into everything cognized by us, from that which is cognized, in order that our attention may not be distracted by the properties that we, in substance, perceive. Only by ignoring the self-elements of our receptivity do we place ourselves in a position from where can propound sensible questions. Only by getting rid of the notion of a circular rotation of the Sun around the Earth, do we prepare our way to study the Sun as it really is. In order to understand what the self-element of our receptivity really is, we need to imagine ourselves suddenly transported to some other part of the universe, and to find there intelligent beings that are able to communicate with us. If we told them that we came from this galaxy, and were to describe our Sun to them, saying that it was a bright hot body around which we moved, they would reply, "You have told us something about the Sun, but you have also told us something about yourselves." Therefore, desiring to say something about the Sun, we should first of all get rid of the self-element that is introduced into our knowledge of the Sun, through the movement of the Earth upon which we exist. One of the principal tasks before us is to get rid of the self-elements in our knowledge of the arrangement of objects. The relations of our universe, or our space with regard to the wider universe of four-dimensional space, are altogether undetermined. The real relationship would require a great deal of study to comprehend, and when apprehended, will seem as natural to us as the position of the Earth among the other planets of our solar system seem to us now. The study of arrangement can be divided into two classes: those that create the faculty of arrangement and those that use and exercise it. Mathematics exercises it, but does not create it. However, unfortunately, in mathematics, as taught today, the student is launched into a vast system of symbols, the entire use and meaning of which is lost to them. Reference: a new era of thought. Taking these things into consideration, we need to define our understanding of those sides of our receptivity dealt with by Kant. So what is space? Taken as an object that is perceived by our consciousness, space is for us the form of the universe, or the form of matter in the universe. Space possesses an infinite extension in all directions, however it can be measured in only three directions independently of one another: length, breadth and height. These directions we call the dimensions of space, and say that our space has three dimensions, that it is three-dimensional. By independent direction, we mean in this case a line at right angles to another line. Our geometry, the science of measurement of the Earth or matter in space, knows only three such lines, which are mutually at right angles to one another, and not parallel among themselves. But why only 3 and not 10 or 15? This we do not know. Then there is another significant fact. Either because of some mysterious property of the universe, or because of some mental limitation, we cannot imagine to ourselves more than 3 independent directions. Yet we speak of the universe as being infinite. Because the first condition of infinity is infinity in all directions, and in all possible relations, then we must presuppose in space an additional number of dimensions. That is, we must presuppose an infinite number of lines perpendicular and not parallel to one another. Yet out of these lines we know, for some reason, only 3. It is usually in some such guise that the question of higher dimensionality appears to normal human consciousness. Then, since we cannot construct more than 3 mutually independent perpendiculars, and if the three-dimensionality of our space is conditional upon this, we are forced to admit the indubitable limitedness of our space in relation to geometric possibilities. Though of course if the properties of space are created by some limitation of consciousness, then the limitedness lies only within ourselves. No matter what this limitedness depends upon, it is a fact that exists. A given point can be the vertex of only 8 independent tetrahedrons. Through a given point, it is possible to draw only 3 perpendicular, and not parallel straight lines. So using this as a basis, we define the dimensionality of space by the number of lines it is possible to draw in it, that are mutually at right angles to one another. The line upon which there cannot be a perpendicular, that is another line, then constitutes linear or one-dimensional space. Upon the surface, 2 perpendiculars are possible. This is superficial or two-dimensional space. In space, 3 perpendiculars are possible, that is a solid or three-dimensional space. The idea of the fourth dimension arose from the assumption that in addition to the 3 dimensions known to our geometry, there exists still a fourth, for some reason unknown and inaccessible to us, i.e. that in addition to the 3 known, a mystical fourth is possible. This assumption is practically founded upon the consideration that there are things and phenomena in the world undoubtedly really existing, but incommensurable in terms of length, breadth and thickness, lying as it were outside of three-dimensional space. By really existing, we understand that which produces definite action, which possesses certain functions, which appears to be the cause of something else. As opposed to that which does not exist, which cannot produce any action, has no function and cannot be a cause. There are of course different modes of existence. There is physical existence, recognized by certain sorts of actions and functions, and then there is metaphysical existence, recognized by its actions and functions. A house exists, and the idea of good and evil exists, however they do not exist in a like manner. The same proof of existence is not required for an idea, as is required for a house. A house is a physical fact and an idea is a metaphysical fact. Physical and metaphysical facts both exist, but they exist differently. In order to prove the idea of a division into good and evil, i.e. a metaphysical fact, one has only to prove its possibility. This is already sufficiently established. However, should I desire to prove that a house, a physical fact, may exist, this does not mean that it really exists. I could prove that a man may own a house, however this is no proof that he actually owns it. Our relations to an idea, and to a house are quite different. It is possible, by a certain effort, to destroy a house. To burn or to wreck it and the house will cease to exist. However, suppose that you attempt to destroy, through a certain effort, an idea. The more you try to contest, refute, argue and ridicule, the more the idea is likely to spread and grow or strengthen. Contrary to this, silence, oblivion, non-action and non-resistance will exterminate, or in any case will weaken the idea. Silence and oblivion will not wreck a house, will not hurt a stone. So it is clear from this, that the existence of a house, and that of an idea, are quite different existences. Of such different existences, we know many examples. A book exists and also the contents of the book. Notes exist, and so does the music that the notes combine to make. A coin exists, and so does the purchasing value of a coin. A word exists, and so too the energy that it contains. We discern on the one hand, a whole series of physical facts, and on the other hand a series of metaphysical facts. So as facts of the first kind exist, then so also do facts of the second kind exist, but differently. From the usual positivist point of view, it would seem naive to speak of the purchasing value of a coin separately from the coin. Of the energy of a word separately from the word, or of the contents of a book separately from the book. We all know that these are only what people say, and that in reality, the energy of a word, the purchasing power of a coin and the contents of a book, do not exist. That by these concepts, we only denote a series of phenomena in some way linked with the word, coin and book, but in substance quite separate from them. Yet is this truly so? We decided to accept nothing as given and consequently should not negate anything as given either. We see in things, in addition to what is external, something internal, and we know that this internal element of things constitutes a continuing part of things. Usually their principal substance. So naturally we ask ourselves, where is this internal element, and what does it represent in and by itself? We see that it is not embraced within our space and begin to conceive of the idea of a higher space, possessing more dimensions than ours. Our space then appears to be somehow a part of higher space, i.e. we begin to believe that we know, feel and measure only part of space. That part that is measurable in terms of length, width and height. As was noted previously, we usually regard space as form in the universe, or as a form of the matter of the universe. To make this clearer, it is possible to say that a cube is the form of the matter in a cube and a sphere is the form of the matter in a sphere. Space, an infinite sphere, is the form of the entire matter of the universe. H.P. Blavatsky, in The Secret Doctrine, has this to say about space. The superficial absurdity of assuming that space itself is measurable in any direction is of little consequence. The familiar phrase, the fourth dimension of space, can only be an abbreviation of the fuller form, the fourth dimension of matter in space. The progress of evolution may be destined to introduce us to new characteristics of matter. The formula defining space as the form of matter in the universe suffers from one deficiency, that there is introduced into it the concept of matter, i.e. the unknown. The dead-end siding of positivist philosophy, where x equals y and y equals x, has already been spoken of, to which all attempts at the physical definition of matter inevitably lead. Psychological definitions lead to the same thing. In The Psychology of the Soul, A.I. Herzen writes, "We call matter everything which directly or indirectly offers resistance to motion, directly or indirectly produced by us." Manifesting a remarkable analogy with our passive states. We call force motion that which directly or indirectly communicates movement to us, or to other bodies, thus manifesting the greatest similitude to our active states. Consequently, matter and motion are something like projections of our active and passive states. It is clear that it is possible to define the passive state only in terms of the active, and the active in terms of the passive. Again, two unknowns, defining one another. E. Douglas Fawcett, in an article entitled Idealism and the Problem of Nature in The Quest, April 1910, discusses matter from this point of view. Matter, like force, does not give us any trouble. We know all about it for the very best of reasons. We invented it. By matter, we think of sensual objects. It is a mental change of concrete but complex facts that are too difficult to deal with. Strictly speaking, matter exists only as a concept. Truth be told, the character of matter, even when treated only as a concept, is so unobvious that the majority of people are unable to tell us exactly what they mean by it. An important fact is here highlighted, that matter and force are simply logical concepts, i.e. only words accepted for the designation of a lengthy series of complex facts. It is difficult for us, educated almost exclusively along physical lines, to understand this clearly. However, in essence it may be stated as follows. Who has seen matter and force, and when? We see things, and we see phenomena. Matter, independent of the substance from which a given thing is made, or of which it consists, we have never seen and never shall see. The given substance is not quite matter. This is wood or iron or stone. Similarly, we shall never see force separately from motion. What does this mean? It means that matter and force are simply abstract concepts, just as value, labor, or the purchasing value of a coin and the contents of a book. It also means that matter is such stuff as dreams are made of. Because we can never touch this stuff and can see it only in dreams, then so too can we never touch physical matter, nor see, nor hear, nor photograph it separately from the object. We cognize things and phenomena that are bad or good, but we never cognize matter and force separately from things and phenomena. Matter is as much an abstract concept as a truth, good and evil. It is as impossible to put matter, or any part of matter, into any chemical retort or crucible, just as it is not possible to sell Egyptian darkness in vials. In order to discuss questions of this nature, a certain preparation is necessary, or at the very least a degree of intuition. However, it is unfortunately customary to consider fundamental questions of cosmology very lightly. A person easily admits their own incompetency in music, dancing, or higher mathematics. They always, nonetheless, maintain the privilege of having an opinion and being a judge of questions relating to first principles. It is difficult to discuss things with such individuals. For how will you answer someone who looks at you in perplexity, knocks on the table with their fingers and says, "This is matter, I know it. Feel." How can this be an abstract concept? To answer this is as difficult as to answer the one who says, "I see that the sun rises and sets."